I got robbed and I made $50,000 online. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the wildest story you're going to ever hear on YouTube, and you want to stick to the end because this is like some crazy shit. Right, so before I even go into the video, my name is Brilliance. I build landing pages for info products, and I work with some of the people you probably know. So, like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and yeah, let's get into it. So, just to kind of give you a backstory into what my life has been over the past 7 years, this is going to be a deep dive. I don't want to make it too long, but I'm going to make sure you extract as much value as possible from this video. Right, so I was the kid who, I was an introvert while growing up. Not like I didn't know how to socialize or anything, but I preferred, my time alone. And up until 2017, everything was okay, going pretty fine. Right, so 2017, I was in SS2, so that's the class before the final class in secondary school. Secondary school is what is called in Nigeria. In places like America, you probably hear them say high school, but here it's called secondary school, and in the UK also. So up until my SS2, I had a pretty good life, pretty decent life, right? We didn't have to suffer or anything like that, even though we didn't have anything, but we never went hungry. Right, so my dad is an audio engineer, my mom is a teacher, and we had our fair share of struggles, right? Everyone does. So it's not like it's anything crazy. I didn't like go through the hardest of times, even though I'm from Nigeria, right? So but the reason I want to share this with you is I want to share this with you, especially if you're from a third world country or even a first world country. This is going to affect your life immensely. Like, this is one of the most profound experiences you're going to, immerse yourself into. So 2018, I started learning how to make beats. I downloaded this app called Caustic 3. You can look it up on Google Play Store. I'm sure you're going to find it somewhere there. And I started making beats. This was after I was a barber in 2018, March 2018. So I used to, cut people's hair. My friend had a shop, so I was working with him there. So he taught me how to cut people's hair, and that was like kind of my way of making money at the time. So but time came where I had to, take my WAEC. WAEC is an exam in Nigeria, and it's required if you want to get into university. You can't get into university without WAEC, and there's a substitute for WAEC called NECO, which I'm going to break down. So the problem was my parents didn't have the money to afford, my WAEC fees, and I had to drop out of school. I had to drop out of school and go to Lagos, which is one of the most populated cities in Nigeria, and I had to go there to take my WAEC because it was going to be cheaper for me there. My mom was a teacher at the school where I was going to take my WAEC. Right, so I was in my hometown, and my mom was in Lagos. My mom relocated there about probably 3 years ago, 3 years before then. And she had to do the registration there before I even came to Lagos, right? So this is like something, it's quite common in Nigeria. So what happened was, later that year when I had gone to Lagos to take my WAEC, when I got to the school, the principal of the school, his name was Mr. Lasisi. He was the one in charge of registrations and making sure that everyone's name was, on the list of people who are going to take WAEC. But the problem was, when I got there for my final term printing so that I could, be registered as part of the people who are going to write WAEC, he couldn't find my name. And that was like very, very crazy for me. I was shocked. Like, I started crying. I was like, what am I going to do with my life right now? So by the end of the day, they consoled me and told me that, I was going to take NECO, and the NECO is like, it's a good exam also, and I can even travel out of the country and study with NECO. So I was like, all right, cool. Let me just get back to my beat making. So throughout that point, I just, from there on, just kept making beats, kept improving my skills, posted a bunch of beats on Instagram, even though they were trash, right? So, so I kept making beats. This was 2018. I kept making beats. 2017 was the WAEC period. So like I said, I was now supposed to take NECO. I can't remember the exact timeline. I can't remember the exact time where I took NECO, but I had to take NECO. Then But what happened was I kept working on my beat making skills for 3+ years, from 2018 to 2020. Right, I kept working on my beat making skills, even though I had made zero money. So I was done with my work. I was done with my NECO, and the results came out pretty fine. I didn't really concentrate or anything. I just wrote it as it came, and I was more focused on building my skills rather than school at that point, because already when I was in SS2, as you can remember, I already lost interest in school. I was more of a musician than a student when I was in SS2. I had a group with my friend, so we wanted to be like some artists. We wanted to be like a group of artists. So I kept posting on Instagram. But then a time came where, I was done with my NECO, I was done with everything, and the next logical step was basically to get a job, before I get into university. So I went to work at somewhere called, it's a factory where, they produce sachet water. So I had to work there. I worked there for like probably 2 weeks or a week. I can't remember the exact timeline, but that was about it. And it was like extremely stressful, and you get to work for pennies, right? You get to work for like chump change. So yeah, I worked at that place, and then my manager transferred me to somewhere called Trade Fair. So I had to like sell I wasn't at the manufacturing side anymore. So what I had to do now was I had to now distribute in wholesale to people who actually sold the water to other people. So that was what I was doing for a while. I was 17 at the time. This is 2018, right? I couldn't even get a bank account yet. So I remember going to the bank, and then they told me that I couldn't create a bank account because I was not 18 yet. So kept working, got accused of stealing 100,000 naira, which is about $100 right now, from one of our neighboring shops, because I used to go visit my friend who sold cosmetics by the side of the shop where they said I stole from, right? So that was a pretty crazy experience. The girl left after she accused me of stealing and stuff like that. So, but long story short, I did many jobs. I worked at frozen chicken factory, like where you get to step into frozen ice with your bare legs just to, pack chicken into the back of a van. So some pretty wild experiences. And I actually worked there for just 1 day, and I stopped because it was horrible. Like you stepping with your bare foot into ice and like packing ice with your hand, frozen chicken with your hand. That wasn't the best experience. Even though it was, I actually appreciate the experience right now. But back then it was painful. So long story short, I had to come back to my hometown after doing all those jobs, and I had to come back and continue with my school. I had already taken an exam called JAMB, and this exam is like one of the complementary exams to NECO that you now have to take. They aggregate it, and then you use it to get into university. So I'm trying to break this down so you guys understand exactly like the background before we get into the main thing. So just stick with me here. I got a score of 57.25, and the average score to get into medical laboratory science, then was 60. And that was because I didn't read. I wasn't really interested in school or anything. So I didn't get into university in just the first year after graduating secondary school. So I had to go back to my hometown. Kept making beats. I think this was 2019. Kept making beats. Improved a lot. So I started looking for ways to make money off of my beats. I went to a studio, asked them to teach me how to make beats, but you needed to pay. You need to pay 40,000 naira. That's about $40 right now. You need to pay for them to be able to teach you. So, but I didn't have the money at the time, and I just stayed at the side and just kept learning on my own. I got really, really good. But the crazy thing was that I didn't make any money throughout this period of my beat making career. So from 2018 to 2020, that's 3 years, I made zero. And the reason I made zero was precisely because I had no marketing experience. I didn't really understand how to sell myself, even though my stuff was good. And that's why, marketing and sales is always going to trump any other thing. You need to understand how to do that, even if you have a good product. If you have a good product and no one knows about it, you're not going to make any money. So I didn't know anything about marketing and sales, and I'm not beating myself up because of that. Because it's one of those experiences that teach you, okay, this is where you're lacking, and that's where you have to improve. So I kept working. I uploaded my last beat. This is where it gets intense, right? So I normally went to somewhere called Barracks. My friend used to live there. He was way older than me at this point, so I used to go there to upload beats because my area wasn't like, we had a blackout for like probably maybe like 4 or 5 years, and we didn't have electricity. I know it sounds funny, but yeah, I used to go there because they had electricity, and I used to use it as an opportunity to upload my beats. I kept in my mind that there was no excuses, even though we had no lights. I was going to look for a way to upload my beats. That was the mindset that I kept. And it's funny because you see people complain about a lot of different things these days, and it just pisses me off because you have no fucking idea what you have to do to get to the top. So I was there March 7th, 2020. This was around the period where COVID had just started. It hadn't gotten like very intense. So I uploaded my last beats, and I'm going to link my YouTube channel in the description so you guys know I'm not yapping. So that was March 7th, 2020. 2 a.m. at night. I was up, uploaded that beat, and I went to bed. So I was sleeping. My friend laid on the bed, and I laid on the other side of the bed. So the next time, my friend wakes up at 4:48 a.m. This was early, very, very early in the morning, just before 5 a.m., before the cockroach, bro. And he asked me, he was like, Kosi, where are our laptops there? So, and this is pidgin English, just in case you're struggling to understand it. That means, Kosi, where are our laptops? I said, oh, it's on top of the table. Like, check the table. So he looked at it. He looked at me and he was like, yo, our laptops not there, which means our laptops are not here. And then I woke up and then I scanned the table just to, make sure I wasn't hallucinating or dreaming or anything. And I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find the laptops. I couldn't find the phones. I couldn't find anything. So I was like, shit. Like, we went out that morning. We started searching different houses to just see if we could find someone who stole. We had no idea. Even there was a guy who we actually suspect up to this point, and he most likely did it. And it was a friend of my friend who I actually went to stay with that night. So that happened, and then the next morning he was like, yo, we have to find a way to do this. We're going to do all sorts of things. I was like, I'm not interested. It has happened. So what I have to do now is, take this as an opportunity to grow myself in other areas as well. So I wore my uniform that morning, and let me actually give you something. So when I the day before that day, I had to go to school. No. The day after that, I went to school, and then coming back, I lost my phone. So I lost my phone where I had the backup files, all my plugins, all my tutorials. I lost that phone, and that was because I was pressed in school. After my exams, I had to rush back home, and I forgot that I came with the phone. So I went back to school. I couldn't find the phone anywhere, and I was just smiling all through it. My friends were like, "Yo, that's crazy," and I was smiling, but like I was deeply hurting. So now, my friend was like, we're going to find a way, we're going to recover our laptops. And I said, yo, I'm not going to do any crazy shit to try to recover some damn laptop, right? It has happened. Even though I had all my plugins there, all my backup files, I was willing to let it go. So my dad said, it's cool, it happens. So I said I was going to use this opportunity to learn the guitar and, improve my skills in beat making. So I went home, and throughout a period of 3 weeks, I was sleeping 12 hours every single night, because the past 3 years from 2018 to 2020, I was barely sleeping. I was sleeping every night by 3 a.m. I was barely sleeping. So now I started sleeping like 12 hours just to compensate for all the times that I lost sleep. And I started experiencing slight memory loss. So you will tell me something right now, and in the next minute or even the next 30 seconds, I'll forget it. So my memory I wasn't able to hold stuff together in my memory. So I was like, yo, am I going crazy or something? And during this period, I also entered into like self-development and reading about spirituality and all these things to try to figure out if I really had bad luck or if this was just what's meant to happen, right? Because before then, I thought maybe I was just someone with bad luck. Because I had so many issues with regards to my school and all this stuff. Stuff will get registered for other people, and my own will have issues. So I started reading books on spirituality, started reading psychology, took a lot of notes, tried to understand how people think. That was the period I read Models by Mark Manson, trying to figure out how to deal with women and stuff like that. So I went back. I called my former boss. I was working at a graphic design firm. So I called my former boss. I was like, yo, is there a spot open for me? I want to, come back and work. So he was like, yeah. So I went there that evening. I went there and he offered me a position as the printer, in the graphic design firm. So I used to handle the flex machines. I used to handle the DI, direct image printers, even though I wasn't like really, really good at that. But I was really good at handling the flex machines. So I was doing that from June 2020 to like December 2020. So during that period, I started learning how to code on the job. So I started learning to code, got a course from someone called Code Steel, and I started learning how to code. And yeah, during that period, around in December of 2020, I signed my first client. And he wanted us to build a landing page for his music, and also manage his YouTube account. So that was what I was doing. He paid me about $50 at the time, and I went to the bank and I deposited that money and also gave my friend some cash. My friend who was trying to start up the agency with me as well at the time. So January I officially started my web development agency. So I signed another client, and this client was my friend, and I worked on, even though I didn't know how to fulfill the project, I was like, yo, let's do this. That was like $400 at the time. I hadn't made that amount of money in my life. So, and okay, he wasn't the first, he was the second client. The first client was about $80 at the time. And I showed my friend the transaction. I was like, yo, it seems things are getting better, slowly. So I was happy, I actually gave my dad some money from that, and he was happy as well. So got the second client, which is the $400 client. That was a web app, and I built that. I had no experience. I didn't know how to set up email verification using code. I didn't know how to host web applications. I had to figure this all out through blood, sweat, and tears, even when nobody understood it. So I remember one night where I was at the bar coding the project, and my friend wanted to leave, and he was like, yo, it's late, we have to go. But I was like, no, I'm going to host this project first before I leave here. And I did it. I hosted the project before we left it. That was maybe around 8-9 p.m. And when I hosted it, I was like, fine, I beat that one. So throughout that period, I actually started making real money. There were a couple months where I didn't make any money at all, but it was like a really good introduction. I also had my worst client that year as well, in July. So he came to me. He wanted to build an application for his real estate platform, his real estate company, and he agreed to pay me about $800 at the time. So, and he didn't pay. He ended up not paying. So, but that year I made a good amount of money, right? I made a good amount of money. The next year I tripled my revenue actually. So I made times 3 of what I made that year, and which was 2022, and then in 2023 I made 2.3x what I made that year. So what I made throughout that whole period was around $36,000, not anything much, because inflation eats into all of these things, and the naira currency is just fucked. Like it's heavily devalued, right? So, and the reason I was even able to make any of this money was just because I stuck through every single challenge that was thrown at me, right? I stuck through every single one of them, and I was like, yo, there is no quitting for me. It's not in my dictionary. I have to stick through this, and I have to see it to the end. So I got to the point where I was, I was working with local clients, but I knew this wasn't like the niche I wanted to serve forever. I wanted to, move into building stuff that actually helped businesses like grew exponentially, and I knew it was landing pages. I was seeing people, doing stuff on Twitter, but I didn't really understand how to grow on Twitter or anything like that. So, but I kept looking. My revenue was good. My revenue was growing year over year, month over month. It was growing, even though there were some down months. That's how business is generally. So I kept building, kept looking for ways. Hired my first employee 2023 January. Worked until I got my second and third employees the same year. And yeah, I also, before that period, I go into a pipeline program where I paid $4,000 to get into the program, and they promised us a $72,000 a year software job in probably Canada or one of these countries, but it ended up not working out. So I wouldn't say I wasted $4,000. I got like one of my employees from there because I knew this program had people who were talented. So I used that as an opportunity to, grow my business as well and not like lose out on everything. Even though I don't see it as losing, right? I got some experience out of it as well. So I kept growing the business, hired a few more employees. Got to the gym the year before, 2022, August 2022. That was when I started going to the gym. And then I got to around November, before November, actually in June of 2023. I'm trying to piece all of this together. It's like really complex. There's a lot of things that happen. So I'm trying to piece all of them together. So in June 2023, I started working on, getting different types of clients. So getting people out of my country, people out of my continent, and trying to get clients in like Europe, America, and all these places. So I decided to go with cold DMs. I see cold emails. I had seen people online who had cold email agencies, and I DM'd one of the guy. I actually commented and was like, yo, how can I do this? And it was like, yo, go register at instantly.ai. So I started using Instantly for my cold DMs. I booked quite a good amount of calls. I think like 4 calls or 3 calls. And like I booked more than that, but actually I had only 3 calls. So I had 3 people show up to the calls. I knew nothing about sales calls. Even on the first call, I couldn't even show my face. I thought maybe this man was going to despise me because I was Nigerian. But I jumped on a call with another man who was from New Zealand and one who was from the UK. And I couldn't like put together my value proposition, so they never understood on what value I could really bring to them. And also they weren't the type of clients I was looking for. I was looking for people in the info space, but the information that was available on the database was just e-learning, and e-learning is a bit different. It's different from info products. Info products is like a newer thing, and it's done by mostly by younger people. So most of these e-learning companies were run like by older people who are like middle age to like old age. So the code emails didn't work. I stopped, and then on November 17th, 2023, I jumped on a consultation call with my mentor, Mike, and I paid him $100 for our call, and he gave me some solid advice on how to grow my Twitter and get leads from Twitter. And what happened was from that day, and there's something about the mentor that just makes you want to take action. So you know that somebody is looking at what you're doing, and if you don't, you have to keep yourself accountable. That's why a mentor is like extremely important. When they give you something, it registers subconsciously in your mind that this person is watching what you're doing, so you have to implement on what this person has given you. That's one of the biggest upsides of having a mentor. So you just have to take action. You're drawn into taking action. So he gave me that, and I kept posting, kept engaging, even though I was growing very, very slowly. In December, I was at like 53 followers from 22 followers. And then something happened. I put out a lead magnet on January the 3rd or the 2nd, one of those dates, and I went to 1K followers instantly. And that was a lead magnet on around Iman Gadzhi's landing page. And I went to 1,000 followers instantly. So that was a pretty crazy moment for me. I had a ton of booked calls from there, and I ended up closing 1 client for $1,500 and also closing 2 clients for free, just so I could, get experience and, boost my skill set. And this is something that is very, very important. When you're starting out in your journey, whatever journey it is, First thing you have to pay down is experience debt. So knowledge debt, Alex Hormozi always talks about this. You have to pay down your knowledge debt. And a lot of people, ideally, most times will not do this free work because they want to start getting paid immediately. But you're doing yourself a disservice when you play it like that. Right? Everybody wants to make money, but in order for you to gain confidence comes from competence, which comes from doing the work required. And in order for you to get this confidence, you have to reverse engineer the process and go from doing what's required. You can't just acquire confidence. Confidence is not acquired. You just do the work and then the confidence comes. Right? That's how you get confidence. So I did those 2 jobs for free just to make sure I knew what people in the info space wanted. I could actually build something for people in the info space. And when I did it and they were happy with it, I ended up, charging people from there onwards. I didn't do any free work from there. And in February, I didn't make any money. I made 0. I kept pushing. Even though in January, actually, just to recount, on January 20th, I lost all my clients. Something happened, like a terrible server issue. And I lost all my clients. And I could have easily said, okay, let me, revive this business and try to take it up again and start running the business. I was scared at the point, but I knew that I couldn't continue with that, so I had to go all in with this thing. That was the way I was thinking about it. I knew that this was all of my income was gone. All of my income was gone instantly in just a day. I lost everything. So, but I was also thinking about it like if I continue with this, I'm not going to be able to put out content. I'm not going to be able to focus on Twitter and like grow my business properly. So I have to choose one. I have to go all in on one. And this was God working. So I don't know if you believe in God or you believe in any other thing, but if it's the universe, you believe in anything, but there's a higher power. Right? This was God working to, pull me out of my former business and pull me into this new position where it was going to be like 1,000 times better. So that happened that day. We had a server issue, lost all my clients, had to let go of all of my employees. And bear in mind, at this point, I had like 8 employees. I had to let go of every single one of them. So that happened. It was a very, very terrible situation. Not making any money for almost 2 months. That's like very, very crazy. I don't have a job. I've not worked a job in like 4 or 5 years now. So I just kept building, even without the results. And in March, I ended up booking a lot of calls and, making $11,000 that month. And it's been pretty crazy, right? So every single thing that I've made from the time I started my business, my former business was like $36,000. And in this new business already, like I've made not tens of thousands, right? I've made over like $13,000 so far. So it's like pretty crazy how you can go from being in one situation and just go 10x when you take the risk, right? So when you add this to up, that's $49,000. You get the point. So I'm not trying to say this to say, my main aim of saying this is you have to stick to the game regardless of what the game throws at you. So there's something called resistance. And if you're trying to grow, resistance is always going to be there. Now, if you look at this stuff, let me show you the stuff I actually have pinned here. So if you look at this, you're going to see, do not give into the resistance. Right? And that's like a very, very important thing to me because sometimes I find myself getting tired. I find myself, giving excuses about why I'm not supposed to walk. I find myself distracted. Right? We all do. So all those are forms of resistance and you have to find a way to kick it out of your life. You can't win resistance every single time, but you can win resistance more than it wins you. Right? So the people who are successful, who are really, really successful, people who move very, very fast, are people who beat resistance more than it beats them. Let's say they might be beating resistance at an 80 to 20 ratio. They work hard and their resistance beats them, 20% of the time. But if you're letting resistance beat you like 20% of the 80% of the time, you're going to grow very slowly. That's why you see some people grow slowly and some people grow like very, very fast. And of course, there's timing involved in all of these, but it's very important to understand that resistance is not material. You can't really put a hand to what resistance actually is, but it exists. I don't know if it's the universe or something, but when you're trying to grow, the universe is going to throw things at you. The universe doesn't want you to grow. The universe, people always say, oh, the universe is there for me. The universe is going to do this for me, blah, 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 blah. The universe does not want you to grow. The universe doesn't want you to change. The universe wants you to remain the same. So the only way you can force growth is by wanting change more than the universe does not want you to change. So in order for you to be someone who can make $10,000 or $11,000 in a month, you have to kill your old self who has not been able to make that money, who has not been able to make $10,000 or $11,000. You have to kill that old self. It's very important that you understand this. Anytime you're trying to grow, let's say you want to sell 1,000 code DMs, and this happens to me a lot. So my old self who has not done that before is like kicking and screaming and doesn't want me to grow. And this was explained perfectly by Charlie Morgan. I'm going to recommend one of his videos called Trial by Fire. Your old self is not going to want you to change. Your old self wants you to remain the same. So who you are right now does not want to change. But in order for you to change, you have to understand that your mind is the master of the body, and it's the puppet master, and your body is the puppet. So you have to force yourself to grow. You have to beat resistance. You have to, each time your body throws a fit and tries to stop you from growing, you do 10 times the work, you do 100 times the work. And that way it's going to understand that the master is the mind and the body is not the master. Right? This is an extremely important, this is something that has changed my life, and it continues to change my life. I have it there on my board. So that is the story of how I was robbed and made $50,000 online. Listen, everything in your life is in your hands, regardless if you're in a third world country, if you're in a second world country, if you're in a first world country. Everything in your life is in your hands, and take with this information and do with it what you want to do. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye bye. Subscribe to the channel, like the video if you got any comment out of this. Also drop any comments you have in the comment section below. Ask any questions. I'll reply to every single one of them. See you guys in the next one. Peace.